Abbreviations used in the footnotes. AAS Acts of the Apostolic See. ASF. Archives of Sister Faustina. ASF. Recall. Archives of Sister Faustina. Recollections of people who knew her. ASJC Archives of the Society of Jesus. Krakow ASMDMC Archives of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy Chronicles ASMDMC and D Archives of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, Chronicles and Death Records ASMDMD Archives of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, Death Records Const. Conger. Constitutions of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, Footnotes. To the Diary of Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy. 1. On February 22, 1931, while staying at Block, Sister Faustina received Jesus' order to paint a picture according to a model that was shown to her, confer Diary 47. The saint tried to fulfill the command, but not knowing painting techniques, she was unable to do it by herself. Still, she did not give up the idea. She kept returning to it and sought help from other sisters and from her confessors. A few years later her superior sent her to Vilnius, Wilno, where her confessor, Reverend Professor Michael Sapoko, interested to see what the picture of a hitherto unknown theme would look like, asked the painter Eugene Kazimierowski to paint the picture according to Sister Faustina's directions. The picture was finished in June 1934 and hung in the corridor of the Bernardine Sisters' convent near St. Michael's Church in Vilnius, where Father Sapoko was rector. In 1935, during the celebrations concluding the Jubilee year of the redemption of the world, the image of the Divine Mercy was transferred to the Ostra-Brama Eastern Gate to the city of Vilnius and placed in a high window so that it could be seen from far away. It was there from April 16 to April 28. By permission of Archbishop Romuald Jelbrikowski, on April 4, 1937, the image was blessed and placed in St. Michael's Church in Vilnius. In 1944, a committee of experts was formed, at the order of Archbishop Jelbrikowski, to evaluate the image. The experts' opinion was that the image of the Divine Mercy, painted by E. Kazimierowski, was artistically executed and an important contribution to contemporary religious art. There are several characteristic features of this original image. Against a plain background, Christ is shown walking, with a narrow halo around his head, and his eyes slightly downcast, as if he were looking from above at the spectators. His right hand is raised in a gesture of blessing, while his left hand is opening the robe at his heart not shown, from which two rays of light issue, a pale one to the viewer's right, a red one to the left. The light of these rays shines through the hands and the robe. In 1943, in Lwów, at the request of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, Stanley Butowski painted another image, which was placed in a side altar of the community chapel at No. 39 Setnia Street in Warsaw. During the Warsaw Uprising, this chapel, and with it the image, was burned. Butowski's image was very much liked by everyone. Encouraged by this, the Superior General of the Community of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy asked Butowski to paint another one for the house in Krakow, where the new form of devotion to the Divine Mercy was already expanding. The image was painted and sent to Krakow on October 6, 1943. In the meantime, the superior of the Krakow house had been approached by the painter Adolf Hyla, who offered to paint some sort of picture for the sisters' chapel as a votive offering for having survived the war. The superior, Mother Irene Krzyzanowska, after consulting with the senior sisters and Father Andrasz, S.J., suggested that Mr. Hyla should paint the image according to Sister Faustina's directions. For that purpose, he was given the description taken from Sister Faustina's diary, along with a small copy of the image painted by Eugene Kazimierowski. The image was finished in autumn of 1943 and brought to the Krakow house. Butowski's image arrived at the same time. For this reason a problem arose: which of the images should be kept in the sisters' chapel? It was settled by Cardinal Sapieha, who by chance happened to be present there. He inspected the two pictures and said, "Since Hyla has painted his picture as a votive offering, that picture should stay in the sisters' chapel." He blessed the picture and ordered that it be hung. To this day the picture remains in the side altar to the left of the main entrance, in the chapel of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy at No. 39 Ronia Street in Krakow, and is held in reverence as the image painted under the direction of Sister Faustina Kowalska. People from all over Poland and from abroad come to this image of the merciful Christ to beg for needed graces. There are many votive offerings, and copies of the image are found all over the world. Esbatowski's picture was placed in the Church of the Divine Mercy at Smolensk Street in Krakow. Over the years, many other painters have painted images of the Divine Mercy, based on either existing representations or on Saint Faustina's diary. 2. That is, in the picture. 3. During her stay in Vilnius, Sister Faustina was told by her confessor, Father Michael Sopocko, to write down her interior experiences. When asked by someone in the congregation why Sister Faustina had been writing a diary, Father Sopocko answered, "I was a professor at the seminary and at the School of Theology of the Stefan Batory University in Vilnius at the time. I had no time to listen to her lengthy confessions at the confessional, so I told her to write everything down and then to show it to me from time to time. This is how the diary came into being." Father Sopocko's letter of March 6, 1972. Sister Faustina mentions the confessor's order in numbers 6 and 839 of the diary. In addition to this order from her confessor, the saint mentions, on many pages of her diary, a distinct command to write, given her by the Lord Jesus himself. See Diary Nos. 372, 459, 895, 965, 1142, 1457, 1567, 1665, and others. 4. Aldona Lipshikawa then lived in a stroke in the district of Radymon. She was born on April 14, 1896 in Tbilisi, USSR, the daughter of Serafin Jastrzebski and Mary Lemke. In 1965–66 she was one of the witnesses in the informative process of the Servants of God. "My husband," she recalls, had asked the pastor of St. James Parish in the suburb of Ochota, to find someone to help me in my housework. Reverend Canon James Dabrowski, when pastor in Klebo, became my husband's friend. He baptized him, blessed our marriage and baptized all our children. The Reverend Canon sent us, in the summer of 1924, Helen Kowalski with a note that he did not know her, but hoped she would be all right, ASF. Recall. 5. The Convent of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy at No. 39 Sitnia Street in Warsaw. 6. Mother Michael, Olga Morachevska was born in 1873. She was considered highly educated for those times. She spoke several languages and completed the Conservatory of Music. She entered the congregation later in life. After making her final profession of vows, she was appointed superior of the house in Warsaw. She kept this position until 1928. After the term of office of the Superior General M. Leonard Seleka, she administrated the entire congregation. During her administration as Superior General, the constitutions of the congregations received approbation. She dearly loved her community and sought its spiritual and material development. She founded new homes in Warsaw in the suburb of Grochow, in Rabka, in Lwow, and in Biala, a house affiliated to the house in Plock, 10 kilometers away. She died in Krakow November 15, 1966, and is buried in the congregation's cemetery A.SMDMC. 7. It is a community tradition that sisters stay under the same roof with the Lord Jesus in the Eucharist. Since the chapel at the Warsaw House was in a separate building a few meters from the sisters' house, a second chapel was made on the second floor of the sisters' convent. By permission of the Archbishop's Curia, the Blessed Sacrament was kept there and, in accord with church law, on certain days the Holy Mass was said. The chapel was commonly referred to as the Little Chapel or the Little Jesus. 8. According to the congregation's custom, canonical silence was observed from 9:00 p.m. Private prayers could be recited silently. Most likely the saint thought that praying prostrate on the floor, not the prayer itself, offended this custom. 9. The superiors could be the superior general and the directress of the postulants, for they decided whether the saint would be admitted to the reception of the habit and so to the novitiate in Krakow. The superior general at the time was Mother Leonard Seleka, born December 24, 1850 in Paplin Zemeside Leckie. She came from a family of landowners, and received a higher education in several languages and music. Entering the congregation on September 1, 1885, she made her perpetual vows in Warsaw in 1893, and was given responsible positions in the congregation at an early age. In 1908 she became superior of the house in Dirty near Warsaw. From 1912 she was superior in Warsaw, and from 1918, in Waylandau. After the congregation separated from its general headquarters in France, in 1922 at the first chapter in Poland, she became the first superior general of all their homes in Poland. She kept this post for 6 years. That is, until 1928, and then became assistant to the new superior general. She died November 1, 1933. The directress of the postulants, Mother Jane Berkovich, was born July 31, 1858. She entered the congregation on December 10, 1877, and made her perpetual vows in Laval, France in 1885. While the congregation of Our Lady of Mercy was dependent on the general home in France, Mother Jane was vicar general for the homes in Poland. She was a sturdy and energetic person, sometimes even despotic. She greatly loved the congregation and wished its good, trying to achieve this in a way repugnant to human nature. Her relationship to candidates and the young professed was peculiarly warm and affectionate. She knew how to be tender-hearted, but at the same time her method of disciplining the sisters created an atmosphere of fear. After finishing her term as Vicar General, she was for a time the directress of novices and of the third probation. For this reason she felt throughout her life that she had the privilege of correcting the young sisters. She died in Warsaw July 1, 1940, ASMDMC and D. 10. Helen Kowalska arrived in Krakow on January 23, 1926, to finish her postulancy. That same day Sister Henry Lasinska died in Krakow. Sister Henry was born on January 20, 1897. She entered the community in 1920 and worked as a shoemaker, ASMDMD. 11. Sister Margaret Anagim Butt was born in 1857 and entered the congregation in 1893. She was of great service to the congregation, performing the duty of directress of novices, superior of the house in Vilnius, and then, instructress of the third probation. She was known for her spirit of self-denial, mortification, demanding much of herself. Humble, meek, always prayerful, outstanding in keeping of the rules, she was an example to the sisters, especially those who were in her care. 12. Bishop Stanislaus Rospond, born September 30, 1877, in Liszki near Krakow. After graduating from St. Anne's High School in Krakow, he entered the seminary for the priesthood. After a year he was sent for further studies in Innsbruck, receiving the degree of Doctor of Theology in 1904. He was ordained priest on August 10, 1901. He became prefect of the seminary in Krakow, and then, rector. He was the ordinary confessor of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. On June 12, 1927, he was consecrated bishop. He was vicar general for many years. His relationship with the congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy was very cordial, and he took part in all the celebrations of the congregation. Twice a year he was the main celebrant at the clothing ceremony and profession of vows. He died February 4, 1958 and is buried in his family grave in Liszki. 13. It was clothing day, April 30, 1926. Sister Clemens Butchak recalls that she was helping the candidates put on their habits. She wrote in her memoirs, "In May 6, 1926, I was to dress Helen Kowalska. After she received the habit at the altar, I told her, 'Helen, let us hurry to put on your habit.' Helen fainted. I hurried to get the smelling salts in order to revive her. Later I used to tease her about her loathing to leave the world. I only found out after her death that the reason of her fainting was not sorrow for the world, but something else." ASF. Recall. 14. Sister Mary Joseph, Stephanie Broza, born in 1889. She entered the congregation in 1909 and made her perpetual vows on May 15, 1917. She was a group instructor of the girls in the Krakow Institute. In 1925 she was sent to the general house of the congregation in Laval, France, to observe more closely the formation of novices and to absorb the spirit of the congregation. After her return from Laval, she became directress of the novitiate on June 20, 1926, until October 30, 1934. She was an exemplary directress and a great discerner of souls. She was demanding, but at the same time full of motherly care and benevolence toward each novice. At the General Chapter in 1934, she was chosen to be a member of the General Council and simultaneously, Superior of the Generalate in Warsaw. 5 years later she died of cancer on November 9, 1939, ASMDMC and D. 15. Father Theodore Chaputa was then the confessor of the novitiate. Born in 1884, he was ordained priest July 7, 1907. He completed his theological studies at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. From 1916 he taught religion in the high schools in Krakow. He was then made rector of the minor seminary and tribunal judge. From November 1925 he was confessor of the novices of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy. He performed this function almost until death, and the novices had great confidence in him. Because of ill health, he was released of the duties of rector and moved to Lajuniki to become chaplain of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. He died March 2, 1945, a Krakow Curia. 16. Superiors in the congregation may command in the name of holy obedience only professed sisters. A novice was not obliged to obey such a command. If the directress used these words, she was relying on the goodwill and virtue of the novice, who by subordinating herself to the command could be relieved of these painful experiences. See Const. Conger. Art. 96-99. 17. She probably means the words of the prophet Isaiah 49:15 JB, "Does a woman forget her baby at the breast, or fail to cherish the son of her womb? Yet even if these forget, I will never forget you." 18. Some details of the text suggest that it was at the Warsaw House. The superior was Mother Raphael Bachinska. She was one of the most outstanding superiors. She distinguished herself by a clear, healthy judgment of people and things, a very practical sense, and at the same time a deep spiritual life. She loved the congregation and cared for its material and spiritual growth. In her relations to the sisters she was loving, straightforward, and discerning. She knew how to evaluate and put to use the accomplishments of each sister. She never degraded an individual, but rather tried to raise each one's spirit, come to her aid and cheer her up. M. Raphael, Catherine Bachinska was born December 23, 1879. She entered the congregation October 18, 1900, and died December 23, 1956, ASMDMC. 19. The description points to the Warsaw House. The chapel was in a separate building. The entrance was from the yard. At that time the chapel was used exclusively by the sisters and their students. Laypersons hardly ever came there. 20. The community was running homes for morally neglected and difficult girls. These were commonly referred to as students, wards, or children. They were sent to the sisters by the social service or by parents, and some came of their own accord to do penance. There were up to 230 girls at Bazitnia House. They were divided into 3 groups called classes. The sister in charge of the group was called the mother of the class. The entire description of the vision seems to be a prediction of the difficulties which the saint will face in her work as apostle of the divine mercy. It also predicts the final triumph of this work, and herself in it. 21. The confessors were Father Q. Lesha and Father Islanik. The extraordinary confessor was Father Aloysius Bukovsky, S.J. 22. The Reverend Professor Michael Sapoko, born on November 1, 1888, at Novosaddy, in the Vilnius region. He studied at the Roman Catholic Seminary in Vilnius. He was ordained priest on June 15, 1914. Later he was graduated from the School of Theology of the Warsaw University and, in 1924, from the State Pedagogical Institute. In 1928 the Ministry of Religion and Public Education appointed him to the chair of Pastoral Theology at the School of Theology of the Stefan Batory University in Vilnius. In 1934 he became docent of the Warsaw University, officially delegated to the chair of Pastoral Theology at the University of Vilnius. In the same year he became rector of St. Michael's Church in Vilnius. For many years he was confessor to many communities of monks and nuns. He was ordinary confessor of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy from January 1, 1933 to January 1, 1942. During the war he was professor at the seminary at Białystok, where the Vilnius Seminary had been transferred. ASF. Autobiography. The Chronicle of the Krakow House states that Father Sapoko was in Krakow on August 28, 1938. It is very likely that he visited the Servant of God at Pradnik then, but her notes stop before that date. The Reverend Monsignor Dr. Michael Sapoko died on Sister Faustina's name day, February 15, 1976, at 8 p.m. at Białystok. The funeral took place on February 19. The main celebrant was His Excellency Most Reverend Bishop Henry Galbinovich, the diocesan ordinary. With him 80 priests celebrated. His Eminence, Stepankard Wyszynski, Primate of Poland, sent a telegram expressing his condolences. 23. Before arriving in Vilnius, the saint had seen her future spiritual director in 2 visions. The first took place in Warsaw, during the 3rd probation, the second in Krakow. See Diary, par. 53 and 61. 24. This was not yet consumption, which later spread throughout her whole body, but general exhaustion due to a new way of life, intense spiritual combat and experiences which made it difficult for her to perform her duties. 25. She was working in the girls' kitchen, where meals were prepared for more than 200 people. 26. As the doctors found no organic disease in Sister Faustina, the sisters thought that she was feigning illness, and that she preferred prayer to work. ASF. Recall. 27. As Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by fire falling from heaven, see Genesis 19:24, so Warsaw was indeed destroyed during World War II, as were many Polish towns, by incendiary and demolition bombs dropped from aircraft. 28. Józefinek, a newly created house of the community, at 44 Hetmanska Street in the Grochow section of Warsaw. The new house was administered by the superior of the house at 3/9 Setnia Street. 29. The confessors at Plock were Reverend Monsignor Adolf Magilewski, Reverend Monsignor Louis Wilkinski, and Reverend Wacław Jezusek. 30. The superior of the Plock house was Mother Rose Jane Klobukowska, born in 1882. She entered the congregation in 1902, and made her perpetual vows in 1909. She was superior in many of the houses of the congregation. From 1934 to 1945 she was assistant to the Superior General. From 1946 to 1952 she was Superior General. 31. Father Joseph Andrasz, S.J., born at Zakopane on October 16, 1891. He entered the Jesuit order on September 22, 1906, and was ordained on March 19, 1919. He worked at the Jesuit publishing house Y Donato Apostolstwa Modlitwi for 8 years. In 1930 he became the manager of the publishing house and editor of the monthly Messenger of the Sacred Heart, Pozlanig Circa Yezasawigo. From 1932 he was the extraordinary confessor of the novitiate of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. He died on February 1, 1963, ASJC. 32. Spiritual childhood according to the conception of Saint Therese of the Child Jesus, see Autobiography of a Soul. 33. Vilnius lies on the Wilia River. Across the river from the town, on woody hills, were the stations of the cross called Calvary, Polish Kalwaria. Going from station to station was called walking the paths. It was possible to get there from the sisters' house by boat. 34. Mother Irene Krizanovska. Sister Irene, Mary Krizanovska was born on November 25, 1889. She entered the congregation on December 7, 1916, and made her perpetual vows April 30, 1934. She greatly loved the youth and was wholeheartedly given to the apostolic work. She served as educator in the Institute for Girls, assistant to the Superior General. After years of sacrificial toil she died in Wrocław on December 3, 1971. 35. Probably Sister Justine Golofit, a friend from the days of novitiate. Mother Irene, wanting to please the servant of God, appointed her as a companion. Sister Justine Golofit, born July 5, 1908, entered the congregation in August 1927. She made her perpetual vows on October 39, 1934. After that she worked in the kitchen in Warsaw, Vilnius, and Radom. Because of heart trouble, she then did lighter work. She was one of the witnesses during the informational process of the Servant of God. 36. Biala, a village near Plock, today known for its petroleum fields, where the community had purchased some farm buildings and set up a rest home for the sisters and wards of the Plock house. The sisters lived in a small farmhouse situated in the garden, with the main entrance from the side of the garden. There was a porch before the main door. 37. Probably Father Peter Trianchik, who was recuperating at Biala and, at the same time, as the community's chaplain, served the sisters in spiritual matters. While decorating the chapel with flowers, Sister Faustina probably wanted to put some in the chaplain's quarters. Reverend Peter Trianchik was born April 30, 1887, and was ordained priest on June 22, 1913. On March 7, 1941, he was arrested by the Germans and sent to the camp in Gieldo, where he was murdered that same year. Monthly Pastoral. Plock, N.R. 9, 1949. 38. The wards were Imelda, Edwarda, Ignatia, Margaret and Hedwig Auer, CASF. And letter J. Auer. The first four have died. Hedwig Auer was a witness in the information process. The act concerning the vision was written in Vilnius on November 28, 1934, and signed by Sister Faustina, Sister Tata, who recorded Sister Faustina's statements, and Imelda. Mother Irene, the superior of the house, verified its authenticity. 39. The directresses of the novitiate made their own handbook on the vows, based on the work of Father Peter Kotel, S.J., a catechism of vows. Each novice was to write the questions and answers in her notebook and study them by heart. 40. In the community of Our Lady of Mercy, sisters live in common rooms, several to one room. The place occupied by each is separated from the others by a stable partition. These partitioned places are called cells. 41. Sister Stanislaus Stepchinska, who was ill, was staying at the block house at the time. Seeing that Sister Faustina was more recollected, meek and prayerful, she spied on her and even checked her bed in search of extraordinary tools of penance, information provided by Sister Christine Korzeniowska. 42. That is elsewhere in the diary. For a long time Sister Faustina did not take notes of her experiences and of graces received. It was only at the explicit order of her confessor, Father Sapoko, that she began to write down her experiences as they occurred, and also earlier ones as she remembered them. After some time, she burned her notes. Father Sepoko gives the following account: "When I was in the Holy Land for a few weeks, she was persuaded by a supposed angel to burn the diary. As penance, I told her to reconstruct the part destroyed. But in the meantime new experiences came, and she wrote down new and old things alternately. Hence the lack of chronological order in the diary." 43. There are indications that it was in the house in Zetnia Street in Warsaw. The following senior mothers were there at the time: Mother Jane Bertkowicz, Mother Margaret Gimbut, Mother Raphael Baczynska, Mother Michael Moraczewska, Superior General. There is some probability that it was done by Mother Jane Bertkowicz, who was very much interested in the young sisters. 44. Perpetual vows. In the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy, the Superior General, after hearing her counsel, either admits a professed sister to perpetual vows or dismisses her after 5 years of temporary vows. Const. 45. Sister Faustina was set at peace during a retreat conducted by Father Andrasz from April 20 to April 30, 1933. He understood her and gave her sound advice on how to proceed along the road of God's readings. 46. The saint had in mind here the fulfillment of God's desires regarding the painted image of Christ with the red and pale rays and the signature, "Jesus, I trust in you." The public veneration of the image, and the making known of the chaplet and novena to the Divine Mercy. All these demands were realized as a result of the endeavors of Father Sepoko. 47. Sister Faustina, then a postulant, was working in the kitchen with Sister Marciana Oswiecimska. Sister Marciana told her to wash and put away the dishes, and left. Helen, later Sister Faustina, set to work, but sisters kept coming for the second dinner, and every now and then one of them would ask Helen to serve her dinner or do her a favor. Helen, not wanting to refuse, served each one, but did not do her assigned work. When Sister Marciana came back and saw the dishes still not put away, she thought Helen had neglected her order and told her that for a penance she was to sit on the table, while she herself did the work. Sister Marciana, Julia Oswiecimska, was born in 1897. She entered the congregation in 1919. For many years she fulfilled the duties of a cook. She was energetic, demanding, but full of love of neighbor. Sister Marciana Esricole. 48. Only superiors can give orders by virtue of obedience, and that concerning only serious matters. Sister Marciana could not do it and certainly did not do it. She told Helen to sit on the table as a form of penance. Helen was surprised by this kind of penance and hesitated to obey the order. Then Sister Marciana asked the postulant, "Is this what your obedience is like, Helen?" This question was misunderstood by Sister Faustina as an order by virtue of obedience. Sister Marciana Esricole. 49. In some houses, including the Warsaw house at Zetnia Street, the sisters used to have a night watch. The sisters on duty would circle the house, light the yard, and look through the windows to protect the house against burglary. 50. This is the popular name of the Franciscan Sisters of the Family of Mary, a congregation founded by Archbishop Falinsky in 1857. The mother house of the congregation is in Warsaw, at Zalozna Street, and is next to the Generalate of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. 51. See footnote 7. 52. She was probably replacing Sister Modest Rzychkowska, who was ill and had to undergo treatment in Warsaw. Recall of Sister Pelagia. 53. All sisters devote one day at the beginning of the month to spiritual renewal, the so-called one-day retreat. There is no recreation on that day. The sisters keep silence and have an hour of meditation, the Way of the Cross, monthly examination of conscience, and a half-hour meditation about death. Confer Const. Conger. 54. Every month, each novice spent one day, appointed by the sister directress, as the so-called Day of the Crusade. On that day she was obliged to practice greater recollection and union with the Lord Jesus in the Eucharist, ask the sister directress for some additional mortification, and offer all her work, prayer and sufferings to the Lord Jesus in atonement for sinners. Some sisters continued this practice even after leaving the novitiate. 55. Sister Faustina left 4 pages empty. She probably intended to go back and fill in some past experiences, but did not. 56. The third probation is the period of preparation for the sisters who are to make their perpetual vows. In the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy, it lasts for 5 months. The saint made her third probation in 1932–33 in Warsaw. The directress was Mother Margaret Gimbut. 57. Waylandau, a house of the congregation, located 20 kilometers from Warsaw. The sisters had a home for girls there. In 1936, at the suggestion of the Ministry of Justice, a reformatory for first offenders, girls and women, was established there. Apart from the retreat, Sister Faustina was at Waylandau from March 25 till May 1936. 58. The retreat was conducted by Reverend Edmund Elder. S.J. was born on November 14, 1887. He joined the order on July 15, 1905. Outstandingly gifted, he studied the humanities, theology, and, in 1919/20, international law at the Warsaw University. Next he studied in Rome and in France. In 1926 he became a professor of ethics at the Gregorianum in Rome. From 1932 to 1935 he was in Warsaw, and then went back to Rome as a professor of homiletics and rhetoric. He died in Rome on August 27, 1955. 59. The center of a former estate about 1 kilometer from Waylandau, where the congregation has a home for children. It comes from the foundation of Princess Czwartynska, who gave the congregation a tract of agricultural land, forest and some farm buildings for a home for morally threatened children. Until 1947 the home was administered by the Superior of Waylandau, but since then it is an independent unit. Hist. Conger. 60. Vestry. That is, a storehouse for the sisters, clothing and a sewing room for same. It was the duty of the sisters working there to sew new clothes and linens, to mend and distribute to the sisters the clothes and linens coming back from the laundry, as well as to provide them with needed clothing. 61. At that time the congregation was divided into 2 choirs, the so-called director sisters and coadjutor sisters. The membership to one or the other was decided by the congregation's governing body on the basis of the candidate's intellectual level, age and abilities. The director sisters' task was to manage the congregation and the penitents' homes. The coadjutor sisters did the manual work and served as helpers to the director sisters, especially in the area of physical labor. Const. Conger. 62. The iron belt was a kind of belt made of fine wire mesh, used as an instrument of penance. The sisters could wear the belt with the superior's permission and only for a specified period of time. 63. Across the hall from the small chapel was the congregation hall, where meetings were held. 64. Recreation. That is, the time given the sisters to relax after work. 65. Sister Faustina's younger sister, Wanda Kowalska, born in 1920. According to the information of their eldest sister, Josephine Jasinska Kowalska, shortly before World War II Wanda entered the congregation of the Ursuline Sisters. During the war she was taken to Germany for forced labor. She did not return to Poland, but married an Englishman and went to England with him. Her husband was soon drafted and died in action. Wanda came to Poland once, but had to go back to England a few days later because of the political situation at the time. A few years later the family was notified by an unknown priest of Wanda's serious illness and hospitalization. She has not been heard of since. 66. Probably one of the ordinary confessors in Warsaw. 67. A presumed permission, When a religious does something without the superior's knowledge, on the assumption that the superior would give her permission to do it. 68. The sister finished the third probation at the novitiate, and so ended the period of temporary vows. 69. The pall, a large piece of black cloth with a white cross in the middle. According to the congregation's ceremonial procedure, before taking perpetual vows the sisters prostrated themselves before the altar and were covered with the pall as a symbol of being dead to the world. In the meantime, other sisters recited Psalm 129, and the bells tolled as during a funeral. The officiating priest, usually a bishop, sprinkled the prostrate sisters with holy water and then said, "Rise, you who are dead to the world, and Jesus Christ will enlighten you." 70. It may be supposed that Sister Faustina refers here to Father Elder S.J., who, during the retreat before the third probation, set her at peace and encouraged her to be faithful to God's graces. 71. See footnote 32. 72. There was a custom in the congregation that, every month, sisters would ask the superior for permission to practice little mortifications, say additional prayers, have various small things at their disposal, be freed from observing the regulations which they momentarily could not keep, and for many other things according to the individual needs of the given sister. 73. Bishop Respond, a great friend of the congregation, who for many years presided over the ceremonies of clothing and vows, celebrated Mass and gave the homily for the occasion. During the clothing ceremony he presented the postulant with the habit and veil, the novices with the cincture and rosary, the crucifix, and the black veil. The temporary professed with a burning candle and a ring as a sign of perpetual betrothal with the Lord Jesus. Cf.12. 74. The Jesuits have a 30-day retreat during their third probation, before perpetual vows. 75. The superior at Częstochowa at the time was Mother Serafina Kukulska. Sister Serafina, baptized Salomia, was born November 30, 1873. She entered the congregation July 18, 1894. She was a group instructor and then superior in Krakow, Częstochowa, Wałęsa. She died June 10, 1964, ASMDMC and D. 76. The formation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy is based on the asceticism of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, who distinguishes 3 degrees of humility. 77. The picture painted in Vilnius by artist Eugene Kazimierowski, Confer 1. 78. Probably Sister Filomena Andrzejko, who died in Warsaw on July 13, 1934, at 4:45 p.m. 79. All sisters in good health had an Adoration of Atonement, so-called Holy Hour, every Thursday from 9 to 10 p.m. before the first Friday of the month. The adoration lasted all night, with sisters changing every hour. 80. Dr. Helen Maciejewska, born 1888, was the doctor of the sisters in Vilnius. In February 1935 she moved to Wieleka to assume directorship of the county hospital. She was a good and valued doctor, noted for her comprehensive mind, and a sensitive and sacrificial heart for the sick. She died on September 21, 1965. 81. There is a Church of the Divine Mercy in Smolensk Street in Krakow, built in 1629. Its patronal feast is celebrated on September 14, the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross. 82. Chapter, Polish Capitula, a meeting during which the House Superior gave a short exhortation and made observations on the observance of the rule, and the sisters accused themselves of external shortcomings. 83. The superior in Vilnius at this time was Sister Borja Hedwig, born January 25, 1887. She entered the congregation in 1913. She was a nurse, and also a superior in Vilnius and Wałęsa. She died in Wrocław on April 26, 1970. She was a witness in the informative process. 84. Probably Sister Frances of the Bernardine Sisters who, on January 15, 1936, paid a visit with her superior to the sisters in Vilnius, ASMDMC. 85. Benediction. A short service which concluded with a blessing with the Blessed Sacrament. 86. The chain, like the belt, confer 62, is made of a wire mesh in the shape of a bracelet and is used as an instrument of penance. 87. We know from Father Sopoko's letter of November 1937 to Sister Faustina that he talked to the nuncio, Archbishop Cortesi, about establishing a Feast of the Divine Mercy. He hoped the nuncio would present the matter to the Holy Father, see letters 160. 88. The way she recorded the resolutions on clean sheets has been reproduced according to the original diary entry. 89. The vision concerns Father Sopoko, who was to suffer greatly because of the destruction of the devotion to the Divine Mercy. The prediction was almost literally fulfilled. Decree 65/52 of the Sacred Congregation of the Holy Office, dated November 28, 1958, and a notification of Marquis 6, 1959, prohibited the spreading of the devotion to the Divine Mercy in the form given by Sister Faustina. As a result, the images which had been hung in many churches were removed. Priests stopped preaching about the Divine Mercy. Father Sopoko himself was severely admonished by the Holy See and suffered many other troubles in connection with the spreading of the devotion to the Divine Mercy. The Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy was also forbidden to spread the devotion. In consequence, the images, the chaplet, the novena and all other things that might suggest that the devotion was being propagated were withdrawn. It appeared that the work of mercy, so much recommended by Sister Faustina, had been destroyed and would never rise again. Until the notification, the image of the Divine Mercy received much honor in the congregation's home in Krakow, where Sister Faustina died, and it was covered with votive offerings. A solemn Mass was held on the third Sunday of each month, and priests preached sermons about the Divine Mercy. The first Sunday after Easter was celebrated as the Feast of the Divine Mercy, which Cardinal Adam Sapieha in 1951 invested with a plenary indulgence for 7 years. In view of the Holy See's ban, the sisters addressed the ordinary of the Archdiocese of Krakow, Archbishop Baziak, to inquire what should be done with the image which hung in the side altar, covered with many votive offerings, and what attitude should be taken towards the celebrations in praise of the Divine Mercy. In answer, Archbishop Baziak ordered the image to be left in its place and the faithful not to be forbidden to pray before the image for needed graces. He also ordered the existing celebrations to be maintained. In this way the devotion to the Divine Mercy survived the test in the small center of the congregation in Krakow, at 3/9 Ronia Street, where the body of the saint is buried. At present, the devotion is again gathering force, renewing and attracting the interest of theologians. Since the first part of her prophecy was fulfilled almost literally, it could well be supposed that the remainder of it would also come to pass. 4. Regarding prophecy, the Word of God offers His instruction. Know that, even though a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if his oracle is not fulfilled or verified, it is an oracle which the Lord did not speak. Deuteronomy 18:22. The following facts attest to the genuineness of Saint M. Faustina's prophecy. On June 30, 1978, the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, AAS page 350, published a notification, signed April 15, 1978, by His Eminence Franjo Cardinal Sepper, Prefect, and Archbishop Jerome Hammer, OP, Secretary. It is as follows: from various places, especially from Poland, even proceeding from competent authority, it has been asked whether the prohibitions contained in the notification of the Sacred Congregation of the Holy Office, published in the Acts of the Apostolic See, in the year 1959, p. 271, regarding the devotion to the Divine Mercy in the forms proposed by Sister Faustina Kowalska must be regarded as still in force. This sacred congregation, having now in possession the many original documents unknown in 1959, having taken into consideration the profoundly changed circumstances, and having taken into account the opinion of many Polish ordinaries, declares no longer binding the prohibitions contained in the quoted notification. On July 12, 1979, in response to the Superior General of the Congregation of Marians of the Immaculate Conception of the BVM, who in the name of the Provincial Superior of the American Province of St. Stanislaus Kostka, of said congregation, had asked for an authoritative explanation of the scope of the text in the notification of 1978, rescinding the prohibitions to spread the devotion to the Divine Mercy proposed by Sister Faustina Kowalska, the prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith ascertained, in reference to that matter raised in the letter of Father General, I have the honor of informing you that with the new notification, AAS, the 30th of June 2978, p. 350, arrived that in the light or original documentation examined also by the careful informative intervention of the then Archbishop of Krakow, Card. Karol Wojtyla, it was the intention of the Holy See to revoke the prohibition contained in the preceding notification of 1959, A.S. 1959, p. 271, in virtue of which it is understood that there no longer exists, on the part of this congregation, any impediment to the spreading of the devotion to the Divine Mercy in the authentic forms proposed by the religious sister mentioned above, the servant of God Sister Faustina Kowalska. Furthermore, Saint Faustina's spiritual director lived long enough to give his sworn testimony regarding her holy life and heroic virtues at the beginning of the canonical process towards the declaration of her sainthood. Then, it was hardly 3 years and 2 months after his death, which occurred on February 15, 1975, and which happened to be Senior Faustina's name day, as well as the day on which Saint Claude Colombier, S.J., the spiritual director of Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, to whom the devotion to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus was revealed, died, that the 20-year prohibition concerning Senior Faustina's writings and proposed forms of the Divine Mercy message and devotion began to spread again with renewed vigor throughout the world. Exactly 6 months after the ban was lifted by Pope Paul VI, the Archbishop who inaugurated her beatification process was elected Pope. The second encyclical of his pontificate was Dives in Misericordia, God, who is rich in mercy. It was published in November 1980, and immediately hailed by non-Catholics as among the greatest of papal encyclicals, though it took Catholics almost a year to come to the realization of the timeliness of and need for such a teaching. At that time, Pope John Paul II had not yet seen Senior Faustina's spiritual diary. Not only was Senior Faustina beatified in 1993 and listed among the saints during the Jubilee year 2000, but during the homily on the occasion of her canonization ceremonies the Holy Father announced the extension to the entire Church of the Feast of the Divine Mercy, for the establishment of which our Lord pressed the Secretary and Apostle of His Mercy to exert every effort. Permission to celebrate the second Sunday of Easter as the Feast of the Divine Mercy was granted to Poland in 1995 in response to a request made to the Holy See by the entire Polish hierarchy. Divine Mercy Sunday is being jubilantly and ever increasingly celebrated in practically every country around the world. This happened a little over 60 years after Saint Faustina's death. Whereas, it took 100 years before the devotion to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus was officially established by the Church, in that case also only after a request of all the bishops of Poland. And another 100 years before the Feast of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus was extended to the Universal Church. What is more, as though expressing the fulfillment of Saint Faustina's prophecy, and then God will act with great power, which will give evidence of its authenticity. It will be a new splendor for the Church, although it has been dormant in it from long ago. The Holy Father declared in the same homily, Jesus told Senior Faustina, humanity will not find peace until it turns trustfully to Divine Mercy, Diary, p. 132. Through the work of the Polish religious, this message has become linked forever to the 20th century, the last of the second millennium and the bridge to the third. It is not a new message, but can be considered a gift of special enlightenment that helps us to relive the gospel of Easter more intensely, to offer it as a ray of light to the men and women of our time. What will the years ahead bring us? What will man's future on earth be like? We are not given to know. However, it is certain that in addition to new progress there will unfortunately be no lack of painful experiences. But the light of divine mercy, splendor, which the Lord in a way wished to return to the world dormant from long ago through Senior Faustina's charism, will illumine the way for the men and women of the third millennium, emphasis added. Even this final part of the prophecy was verified. When this triumph comes, we shall already have entered the new life in which there is no suffering. But before this, your spiritual director's soul will be surfeited with bitterness at the sight of the destruction of your efforts. But God has promised a great grace especially to you and to all those, here she quotes Jesus' words, who will proclaim my great mercy. I shall protect them myself at the hour of death, as my own glory. 90. The retreat in Vilnius, held from February 4 to February 12, 1935, was conducted by Father Miswich, S.J. At the end of the retreat there was a Mass in the Eastern Rite, and the sisters received communion under both species. 91. Renewal of the vows. The constitutions of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy contained the provision that twice a year, after the 8-day and the 3-day retreats, each sister should renew her vows of chastity, poverty and obedience, together with the whole community, by reciting aloud a shortened formula, to which the following prayer was added: My Lord, grant me the grace to observe them more faithfully than I have up to now. 92. Sister Faustina's family lived in the village of Głogowik, district of Turek, province of Lod. 93. Sister Maria Salomia Olszakowska, who died in June 1962. 94. The image of the Divine Mercy, with two rays, a pale and a red one, painted by Eugene Kazimierowski in Vilnius. The picture was displayed for public veneration in the Dawn Gate at the conclusion of the Jubilee of the Redemption of the World, April 26 to 28, 1935. See Diary No. 419 and Footnote 1. 95. Sister Faustina thought she was to leave the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy and found a new community, whose task would be to spread the devotion to the Divine Mercy and pray for mercy for the world. 96. Sister Faustina wrote that the Lord Jesus was demanding from her the founding of a new community, whose aim would be to pray for divine mercy for the world and to spread the devotion of the Divine Mercy. As she did not want to do anything on her own, Sister Faustina confided these inspirations to her confessor, Father Sopocko, to her superior general, Mother Michael Morichewska, and, after coming to Krakow, also to Father J. Andrasz, S.J. The confessors were undecided. Mother Michael gave her permission after long hesitation, but stressed that she was taking no responsibility. Sister Faustina turned to Archbishop Romuald Jelbrikowski with her inspirations. He did not refuse, but said it was necessary to wait for a clearer sign from heaven. Despite steady efforts, Sister Faustina did not live to see the new community founded. It was only owing to Father Sopocko's efforts that the matter arose at a Bible Hour meeting in 1941, and on October 15, 1941, the first candidate took the vow of chastity before Father Sopocko and pledged poverty and obedience. In the next year other candidates joined her and made similar vows and promises. In 1946 the first candidates, Osinska and Naborowska, left Vilnius and settled at Myślibórz, in the Diocese of Gorzo. Others soon followed, and slowly the congregation began to develop. On August 2, 1955, the Ordinary of Gorzo, Zygmunt Chalazek, on the basis of special authorization, established the Congregation of the Most Holy Lord Jesus Christ, Merciful Redeemer, whose aim was to spread the cult of the Divine Mercy and to assist the church hierarchy. In this way the wish of the saint was fulfilled without her personal participation. CEO Isidore Borkovich, O. F. M. Con. Kowalska Helena Manuscript. p. 1897. Sister Faustina had in mind the founding of the new community and was asking Saint Ignatius for help. 98. The 3-day retreat on August 12 to 16, 1935, was conducted in Vilnius by Father Zychkovsky, S.J., later provincial of the northern province of the Society, which had its headquarters in Warsaw. 99. The Archbishop of Vilnius at the time was the Reverend Romuald Jelbrykowski, 1876–1955. He was graduated from the seminary in Petersburg, 1889–1902, and was ordained in 1901. He became professor at the seminary in Sani and canon of the Sani chapter. He was evacuated to Petersburg during World War I, and then moved to Minsk, where he conducted lively pastoral educational and social activities. After several years of wandering, he returned to Sani in 1917. Consecrated bishop in 1918, he worked as an auxiliary in the Polish section of the Diocese of Sani. From 1921 he was the apostolic delegate, and in 1926 the first ordinary of the newly established Diocese of Limza. On the death of the Metropolitan of Vilnius, Archbishop Jan Cieplik, he assumed government of the Diocese of Vilnius on September 8, 1926. On March 13, 1940 he was arrested by the Germans and interned in the monastery of the Marian Fathers at Mariampol in Lithuania. He returned to Vilnius on August 5, 1944. In December of the same year, he was again arrested and imprisoned in Vilnius. After the end of World War II, he had to transfer to Białystok, where he devoted all his energies to the organization of the Metropolitan Curia, appointing priests to the vacant parishes and dealing with many necessary matters. In this relationship with others, Archbishop Jelbrykowski was simple, accessible, understanding and patient. But towards himself he was very exacting. He died in Białystok on June 19, 1955. 100. Father Sepoko placed this chaplet to the Divine Mercy, as found here in Sister Faustina's diary, on the back of a holy card, a copy of the painting by Kazimierowski in Vilnius, and had it published by the Cybulski Publishing House in Krakow. See letters number 75, 87-90. 101. Father Sepoko, not sure of Sister Faustina's inspirations regarding the establishing of a new community, wanted to refer the matter to one more priest for consideration, and for that reason he told Sister Faustina to give an account of all the commands she received to her former confessor, Father Andrasz, S.J., in Krakow. 102. The Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy has its own cemetery in Krakow, which is in the park, separated from the rest of it by a thick wall with a wide entrance gate. All the sisters and wards who die in Krakow are buried there. Sister Faustina was buried here too, and her body was in a tomb in the cemetery until the exhumation of her body on November 25, 1966. 103. Sister Vitalina Myslowska, born December 4, 1852, died January 6, 1939. 104. During monthly individual meetings with the Superior, the sisters asked her for permission to say private prayers not included in the congregation's rules, Confer 72. 105. There is no custom in the congregation of adding a cognomen to the religious name. But it is possible for a sister to make an addition to her name, depending on the devotion she has, as, for instance, Sister Faustina did, adding of the Blessed Sacrament. 106. In the sisters' dining room refectory there was a bulletin board on which the Superior put the names of the sisters who had some special duty for the given week. In this case, it was duty at the gate during community meals that was meant. 107. In the former constitutions, the title Mother was reserved for the members of the General Council of the congregation and all the house superiors. The wards also addressed their educators as mothers. 108. The postulancy is the first probation period in the congregation. During this time the candidate gets to know better the congregation of which she wishes to become a member, and the congregation likewise gets to know her. 109. After the period of postulancy, the candidate makes an 8-day retreat. During the clothing ceremony she receives the religious habit and new name and begins her novitiate. This is a further stop to test whether the religious life is for the candidate. And at the same time, the candidate has the chance to better know the congregation of which she is to become a member. In the congregation of Our Lady of Mercy the novitiate lasts for 2 years. The first, known as the canonical, is dedicated to the deepening of the spiritual life and convent practices. During this time the novice cannot attend formal schooling, spend time in studies, or perform any absorbing tasks. During the second year of novitiate, the novices may, in addition to their religious practices, study or work under the direction of the professed sisters. If, after this period, the congregation and the novice are satisfied, the novices makes a profession of vows for 1 year, renewing them for the next 5 years annually. During this time, the professed sister may leave the congregation or be dismissed. If all turns out positive, the professed sister is allowed to take perpetual vows, const. Conger. 110. In the congregation of Our Lady of Mercy the sisters take simple vows. In the congregation proposed by Sister Faustina, the sisters would take solemn vows. 111. Office, a liturgical prayer of the Church consisting of psalms and versicles. All sisters have an obligation to say the office. 112. By the enclosure, or cloister, is meant a certain section of the convent restricted to members of the congregation only. 113. For every religious house, the local ordinary appointed a regular confessor to whom every sister should go to confession. According to a provision of canon law, the local ordinary should also appoint an extraordinary confessor for every house. His duty was to visit the house at least 4 times a year to hear confessions. All sisters had to see him, if not to confess, then at least to receive a blessing. 114. The saint had a vision of the future community's house. It was in Vilnius, at 12 St. Anna Street, and it was in complete ruin. Father Sepoko had the house restored with his own money and intended eventually to place the new community in it. The war interrupted the realization of these plans. See letter of Father Sepoko, March 31, 1972. 115. In the dust, a figurative expression of the saint for the way she responded to her feeling of guilt. 116. Pinafore, or apron, could mean several things. For children it was a substitute for a shirt, and Sister Faustina had this in mind. 117. Sister Faustina probably saw the house of the Congregation of the Most Merciful Redeemer at Miss Labor's. 118. Probably Father Ladislaus Wendakovsky, S.J., who looked after the Congregation of the Most Merciful Redeemer for 10 years while Father Sepoko was in hiding. 119. A lash, whip, or similar instrument for the infliction of pain, used by religious as a means of doing penance. 120. Probably the fasts on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. 121. The Church in Poland accepted the practice that in each quarter of the year, 3 days, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, called Ember Days, were set aside for fasting and penitence, and special prayers were said for priests and for vocations to the priesthood and religious life. 122. At that time fasting was obligatory on the eve of the following feasts: Pentecost, Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and All Saints. 123. Some communities, including the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy, by solemn act elected the Mother of God as their superior general, and entrusted to her all matters of this and future life. The act took place on August 5, 1937, at the General House in Warsaw, with all the superiors participating. Then the act was repeated in all the houses on August 15, 1937, with the participation of all the sisters of the congregation. 124. The priest was Father Sepoko, who writes this in his memoirs of Sister Faustina. My troubles reached their peak in January 1936. I never mentioned them to anyone, and it was only on the critical day that I asked Sister Faustina for prayer. To my great surprise, all my troubles vanished into thin air on that very day, and Sister Faustina told me she had taken all my suffering upon herself and experienced so much suffering on that day as she never had before. ASF. Recall. 125. Te Deum, a hymn of thanksgiving, sung during all major feast days and Thanksgiving devotions. Religious congregations pray it during Matins. The origin of the hymn is ascribed to Saint Ambrose, which explains why it was often called the Ambrosian hymn. 126. Probably Sister Veronica Apish. Born March 18, 1853, she entered the congregation on December 16, 1881. She had spent all her life as a religious working in the garden. In her last years she devoted very much time to prayer. She died in Vilnius on January 28, 1936, ASMDMC and D. 127. The whole congregation probably means all the sisters of the house, in this case, of the Vilnius house. 128. Probably Father Anthony Korsak, chaplain of the congregation's house in Vilnius from August 10, 1934 until 1940. Father Korsak was born about 1892 and ordained priest in 1920 for the Diocese of Luck and Zhytomyr. He graduated from the School of Theology of the Warsaw University, specializing in philosophy. From 1929 he lectured on the history of philosophy at the University of Vilnius. After the war he went to Lublin, where he taught logic at the School of Theology and Philosophy at the Catholic University of Lublin. He died in Lublin on October 24, 1969. 129. This vision is mentioned by Father Sepoko in his letter of March 31, 1972. 130. As in other houses, at the Vilnius house the sisters had an institution for girls. The wards sometimes participated in adoration with the sisters to atone for their own sins and for the sins of others. 131. It was probably Sister Antonina Grewal, who writes in her memories of Sister Faustina as follows: After confessions I was worried and doubting whether the Lord Jesus had forgiven me. Weeping, I asked Sister Faustina for prayer. Next morning she said, "Sister, you have grace with Jesus," because he answered at once that he was not angry with you for your sins, but was hurt by your distrust in his forgiveness. I will pray to propitiate him for you. Sister Antonina Grewal, born September 13, 1877, entered the congregation in Vilnius on June 29, 1909. She stayed in Vilnius until the closing of the house in 1945. During World War II, in 1939, she was imprisoned in the Lukiškiai prison in Vilnius together with the other sisters. As a Latvian she was freed after a while. After the sisters had left Vilnius she was sent to the congregation's house at Biala near Plock, where she died on January 22, 1960, ASMDMC and D. 132. One can assume that it was Sister Petronila Baziera, who worked in the garden before Sister Faustina's assignment to Vilnius, and because she was stronger was given the duty to raise the cattle. She died March 5, 1959, in Częstochowa, ASMDMC and D. 133. It was probably Sister Regina Jaworska, who knew Saint Faustina from novitiate days. Sister Regina, Valeria Jaworska was born November 28, 1905. She entered the congregation in 1926 and made her perpetual vows October 30, 1933. She was a witness during the information process of the Servant of God. 134. Most probably the regular confessor of the sisters in Waylandau, Father Czesław Mileszewski. 135. Letter of Father Sepoko, written in Vilnius July 10, 1936, see letter number 49. 136. Probably Father Sapoco's pamphlet called Milicercibos Studium Theologicum Practicum, The Divine Mercy, a theological, practical study, published in Vilnius in 1936. Imprimatur was given by Bishop Romuald on June 30, 1936. No. R 298/36 ASF. The cover of the pamphlet showed a color copy of Eugene Kosimirovsky's image painted in Vilnius. 137. Dr. Adam Silberg, from the sanatorium at Pradnik. Dr. Silberg, a convert, was about 40 years old then. In the years 1937 to 1939, until the outbreak of the war, he was the director of city sanatoriums, Polish Miejski Zakłady Sanitarne, at Pradnik Biały in Krakow, popularly known as Sanatorium, now a special city hospital named Dr. Anka Hospital. He lived on the premises of the hospital together with his wife and son Kazimierz. It is not sure what happened to him after the outbreak of the war. According to the account of Mr. Ludwik Spytkowski, retired janitor at the hospital, Dr. Silberg tried to make his way to the east, together with his wife, and was shot by the Germans near Lwów. Another version, given by Dr. Adamczewski, a radiologist at the hospital, says that Dr. Silberg made his way to France with a group of doctors, then went to Scotland and died there during the war. 138. Probably Sister Fabiola, who had tuberculosis and therefore was in the infirmary. Sister Fabiola Paluk, born in 1912, entered the congregation on April 16, 1934. She died in Częstochowa on November 25, 1947, ASMDMC. 139. The Feast of the Divine Mercy, as the saint stated, according to Jesus' wish, was to be celebrated on the first Sunday after Easter. See Diary Par. 49, 88, 280, 299, 420, 570, 699, 742. 140. The cook, Sister Bronislaus, Juliana Jaworska, born in 1886, entered the congregation in 1908. She died on February 11, 1972. 141. The doctor at the Pradnik Sanatorium confirmed that Sister Faustina had tuberculosis of the lungs. He ordered her to be separated from the others to prevent infection. Sister Faustina was put in the room for the seriously ill, called the infirmary. 142. Father Sapoko, in his letter of October 5, 1936, asked Sister Faustina for the texts of the chaplet and the novena to the Divine Mercy. 143. The following sisters came to take their perpetual vows then: Sister Bolesława Magalska, b. 1902. Sister Cyprian Razed, b. 1903. Sister Damiana Ziolek, b. 1909. Sister Marcelinka Bruniecka, b. 1906. Sister Pankroshna Waszko, b. 1908. Sister Sebastiana Gabanowska, 1905–1942. It is difficult to say which of the sisters confided to Sister Faustina, but it can be supposed it was Sister Sebastiana Gabanowska, who often went through periods of depression. She even asked her superiors to postpone the date of her perpetual vows. Soon after perpetual profession she showed symptoms of mental illness. She was sent to the mental hospital Alkobirzyn near Krakow. She shared the fate of other patients during the occupation. They were taken away and executed by the Germans. The death took place probably at the end of June 1942, ASMDMC and D. 144. In this case the preacher was Father Ladislas Wojton, S.J., who from October 20 to 29, 1936 conducted the retreat before the vows. 145. Probably Sister Gertrude Bajinska, 1875–1966, who shared a room with Sister Faustina for some time. 146. After novitiate the sisters take temporary vows for 1 year. These are repeated for 5 years. Then perpetual vows are taken. Sister Faustina took her temporary vows, which she calls annual vows, on April 30, 1928. 147. This was a letter written on September 21, 1936, in which Father Sepoko informed Sister Faustina about the developments regarding the spreading of the devotion to the Divine Mercy and the founding of the new community. 148. Probably a vision of the house of the Congregation of the Most Merciful Redeemer at Miss Labor's. The community was founded by Father Sepoko after Sister Faustina's death. The Miss Labor's sisters conduct the catechesis of children. 149. Sister Faustina probably made a mistake about her age here. As she herself writes in the diary, she received the grace in the octave of Corpus Christi in 1925. As she was born in 1905, she was 20, not 18 in 1925. 150. Sister David, Antonina Sadro. She was born September 17, 1898, and entered the Congregation of Servants of the Sacred Heart, Polish Cerkanki or Pelczarki, founded by Bishop Joseph Pelcher in 1894. Sisters from the congregation worked at the Pradnik Hospital. 151. Sister Felicia, Jane Zakowiecka. Born in 1900, she entered the congregation in 1926 and made perpetual vows in 1934. She was the house econom at Vilnius and Krakow, and then became house superior at Rabka, and finally at Dirty. She met with the saint at Vilnius and later, from 1936 to 1938, in Krakow. She was a witness at the information process of Sister Faustina. She died at the Wroclaw House on November 7, 1975. 152. The congregation's house in Krakow was about 10 kilometers from Pradnik, where Sister Faustina was staying. In those days, a trip to the sanatorium required much time and trouble, and this is why Sister Faustina was not visited very often. 153. This refers to the sufferings and humiliations experienced by Father Sepoko in his efforts to spread the cult of the Divine Mercy and to found a new community. Sister Faustina received inner knowledge of these sufferings and wrote about it in a letter to Father Sepoko, letter of March 6, 1972. 154. Sister Chrysostom, Mary Korczak. Born in 1892, she entered the congregation in 1921. She worked as a group instructor and as a nurse. She came in contact with Sister Faustina in Vilnius, and then during Sister Faustina's last illness in Krakow. She was appointed to be a witness at the information process for reasons of her office. 155. Sister Kajetan, Mary Bertkowiak. Born January 19, 1911, she entered the congregation in 1933. She was with Sister Faustina in Warsaw and in Krakow. She was a witness at the information process in 1965–66. 156. After Christmas, Sister Faustina was taken back to the hospital at Pradnik by Sister Damiana Ziolek, who gives the following account of the circumstances of the trip. At night a little baby was left by the convent gate. In the morning Sister Frances found it, took care of it, washed and fed it, and started to look for someone to look after the baby. A neighbor who had no children of her own and wanted a foster child learned about it. She readily accepted the congregation's offer, took in the foundling and agreed to give it her name. The cab which was taking Sister Faustina to Pradnik gave the woman a lift to the parish church in Pajors, where the child was baptized and the fact recorded in the books. Sister Damiana, Sofia Ziolek, was born on October 18, 1911. She entered the congregation in 1927. She came in contact with Sister Faustina in Plock in 1932 and then in Krakow. She was a witness at the information process. 157. St. Joseph Church in Pajors. Reverend Joseph Niemczynski was the pastor at the time. 158. Sister Damiana Ziolek. 159. Probably Sister Alana, Caroline Wilush, of the Congregation of Servants of the Sacred Heart. She suffered from consumption and had a room near Sister Faustina's. She was born in 1910 and entered her congregation in 1929. 160. The saint recalls the date of January 2, 1934, when she had first visited the painter Eugene Kazimierowski to give him directions concerning the painting of the image of the Divine Mercy. 161. The superior of the Servants of the Sacred Heart at the Pradnik Hospital was Sister Sebastian, Helen Vasik, 1889–1952. 162. Probably Father Andrash, but it may also have been Father Theodore Chaputa, who visited Sister Faustina in the hospital and heard her confessions. 163. Probably Stanislava Kwiatniewska, former ward of the sisters and a patient at the sanatorium at the time. 164. Sister Faustina was in tuberculosis ward 1, which was about 70 steps from the chapel. 165. Stanislava Kwiatniewska, confer 163. 166. Sister Faustina is probably praying for the intentions of Archbishop Jelbrikovsky, Father Sopoko, and Father Andrash. 167. A Eucharistic Congress was held from February 3 to 7 in Manila in the Philippines. 168. Father Andrash was Sister Faustina's spiritual director at the time, so it can be supposed that the letter concerning permission for minor penitential practices was written to him. 169. Probably Sister Faustina has Father Andrash in mind, as he was her spiritual director at the time, although the words of praise could also refer to Father Sopoko. 170. Passion, Polish Pasja, a Lenten service to give worship to Christ's Passion. Special Lenten songs Gorsky Zale are sung during the service. 171. On the basis of the invocations that follow, Father Sopoko composed a litany to the Divine Mercy, correcting a few invocations and adding some of his own. See Letter of Father Sopoko, May 14, 1972. 172. As Sister Faustina's spiritual director, Father Sopoko had ordered her to carefully underline in her diary everything that she thought came from God, and in particular everything that related to the institution of the Feast of Mercy and the establishment of the new community. 173. Sister Cornelia Terzaska died at Plock on February 15. She was born in 1888, entered the community in 1905, and worked in the congregation as a shoemaker. 174. Father Bonaventure Kudeya of the Piarist Order, Krakow, Pijarska Street. He was born in 1906, ordained priest in 1932. In the religious life he had the duties of House Superior, Counselor General, and Provincial. In 1965–66 he was a judge in the information process. 175. Confer footnote 65 in Sister Faustina's letter to her sisters Natalie and Wanda of June 10, 1938, letter number 296, 297. 176. Probably a prediction that was fulfilled under the German occupation, when many priests secretly celebrated the Eucharist in private homes and basements, without liturgical vestments, and even in concentration camps, wearing prison clothes. 177. Sister Faustina, while making her monthly day of recollection, took advantage of the conferences with Father Bonaventure Kudeya was giving during a retreat for the sanatorium personnel. 178. The word confessors seems to indicate that the saint was told to write the diary not only by Father Sopoko, but also by Father Andrash. 179. Sister Faustina's spiritual director, Father Michael Sopoko, remembered her special gifts, visions, illuminations, enlightenments, hearing inner voices, etc. She is referring to one of these gifts here. That is, interior knowledge of events touching people related to her. CASF. Father Sopoko's letter of March 7, 1972. 180. At the first profession of temporary vows the sisters received a black veil, a little cross, a rosary and a belt. It is this cross that Sister Faustina meant. 181. The Feast of the Divine Mercy, on the first Sunday after Easter. 182. The chapel of the congregation was open only to the sisters and wards at the time. It was only during the German occupation that it was open to the public. 183. The vision most likely refers to the investigations of the writings of Sister Faustina and the mistaken interpretation of them. 184. Polish Ciemnica, literally dark sail, denotes both the altar of Maundy Thursday liturgy repository and the prison in which Jesus spent the night of his passion. 185. Probably fragments of the liturgy of the Holy Week. 186. Father Theodore Chaputa, as the congregation's chaplain, delivered a sermon in the chapel every Sunday. 187. The directress of novitiate at the time was Sister Callista Helen Pekerchik. Born March 30, 1900, she entered the congregation in 1920. She succeeded Sister Mary Joseph Broza as directress on December 10, 1934, and continued until September 8, 1945. She died on September 11, 1947, ASMDMC. 188. Father Sopoko's article in the Divine Mercy published in the Vilnius Catholic Weekly, Tygodnik Katoliki, Nasz Przyjaciel, on April 4, 1937, No. 14. 189. In the Krakow house, the chaplain, Father Theodore Chaputa, had weekly lectures to the sisters on ascetical subjects. These were familiarly called catechism. Sister Faustina probably is referring to one of these. 190. Every year, besides the 8-day retreat, the sisters have a 3-day retreat. 191. An 8-day retreat was being held in the house, preceding the profession of vows and taking of the veil, April 20th to 29th. It was conducted by Father Plaza, S.J., Superior of the House Provincial at 8 Maly Rhynek, Krakow, ASMDMC. 192. We do not know to what talks the vision refers. But we know that Father Sopoko sent a memorial on the Divine Mercy to the participants of the First Plenary Synod, which was held at Częstochowa on August 26 to 27, 1936. The Pope's delegate, Monsignor Marmaggi, presided at the Synod. He probably mentioned the matter of promulgating a Feast of the Divine Mercy in his report of the Synod to the Holy See. That may have caused disputes. We have reason to suppose that the report drew the interest of Eugene Cardinal Pacelli, Secretary of State, and later, Pope Pius XII. But it is difficult to say what the work could have been. The fact that the notification banning the devotion was not issued by the Holy Office until after his death, November 28, 1958, suggests that Cardinal Pacelli's attitude toward the devotion to the Divine Mercy was a favorable one. 193. The ceremonies of clothing, temporal and final professions took place in the congregation twice a year at that time, in the spring on the last day of April or 1st of May, and in the fall on October 30th. 194. Only the Holy See has the right to release one from perpetual vows. 195. These words of the Lord Jesus to the saint attest that, despite the requests to found a new congregation, she is to remain in the congregation of Our Lady of Mercy. The dialogue of the saint with the Lord Jesus, cited on another page of the diary, see Diary Par. 1649, wherein Sister Faustina complains to the Lord Jesus that her congregation has no saint and received the reply, "You will be that saint," likewise proves this. It is a fact that Sister Faustina remained in the congregation of Our Lady of Mercy until her death, and in reference to the new congregation only gave standing guidelines. 196. The Corpus Christi procession to the four altars. The procession started from the parish church at Borgfaleki and ended at the fourth altar, which was in the congregation's garden. The Blessed Sacrament then remained in the sisters' chapel. 197. The sisters' procession was always on the octave of Corpus Christi. The altars were set up and decorated in the garden. 198. Konfer Borkovich. Osto Sunkusio Faustinidus Gromachinianij Milosirnij Shigowad Kapishila, Sister Faustina's connection with the Congregation of the Most Merciful Redeemer. p. 25. 199. Sister Jolanta, a group instructor in the Vilnius house, was attending a course in pedagogy in Krakow at the time, from July 3, 1937. Sister Jolanta, Alexandra Wozniak, was born in 1909. She entered the congregation in 1929. She was a group instructor, and then superior at the Radom, Częstochowa, and Krakow houses. 200. The patron saints of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy. Our Lady of Mercy, August 5th, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, July 31st Street Joseph, March 19th Street Michael the Archangel, September 29th Street Mary Magdalene, July 22nd Saint Teresa of Jesus, October 15th Street Anthony of Padua, June 13th 201. Many articles appeared in the Polish Catholic press at the time on the ungratefulness of the Polish nation to God and to the Church. 202. A place in the Carpathian Hills, where the congregation has a small vacation house for sisters and girls. 203. Probably Sister Helen, who was the superior of the Rabka house. Sister Helen, Mary Urbanska, born in 1884, entered the congregation in 1908. She was a nurse and in 1932 took over management of the newly acquired house at Rabka. She died at Rabka on August 6, 1940. 204. Remember, a prayer to Saint Joseph said daily by the whole congregation. 205. Perhaps one of the Benedictine Fathers, Kazimierz Ratkovich (1906–1965), who was a friend of the sisters in Rabka. The first group of Benedictines arrived in Poland in 1936 and settled in the Jaworzyna villa in Rabka, not far from the hours of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy called Loreto. The fathers regularly said masses there, and Father Ratkovich busied himself with hearing the sisters' confessions. He was great friends with Loreto, and it is very likely that it was he who heard Sister Faustina's confession. 206. The novena which is in the diary was published, with some changes, in a pamphlet called Christus Król Miłosierdzia, Christ King of Mercy, in 1937, by the Jacobolski Press, Krakow. The cover had a colored picture representing the merciful Christ with the rays and the inscription Jezu, Afim Tobi, Jesus, I trust in you. The contents included the novena to the Divine Mercy, the litany and the chaplet. The superior of the Krakow house, Mother Irene Krzyżanowska, sent out the leaflet to the other houses of the congregation. The sisters said the prayers privately, but did not know their origin. 207. According to the congregation's custom, the parlor was entered by the superiors or by sisters appointed for that function. Other sisters could go to their guests only by permission of the superior of the house. 208. References to the imprimatur of two publications. 1. An image of Jesus with the chaplet to the Divine Mercy on the back, for which Father Sopocko obtained permission in Vilnius on September 1, 1937. No. R. 237. 2. A small pamphlet under the title Christus Król Miłosierdzia, Christ King of Mercy, which included the novena, the chaplet and the litany to the Divine Mercy. The imprimatur was granted by the Metropolitan Curia in Krakow, L 671/37. Both were published by the Jacobolski Publishing House, 22 Szewska Street, Krakow. 209. It is likely that the writer mistakenly recorded August instead of September. 210. Sister Faustina calls the gate a desert because the gatekeeper remained separated from the rest of the congregation during most of the day. 211. The saint had two brothers, Stanley and Mcisław. It later becomes clear that it was Stanley who visited her. He was born at Głogowik on March 26, 1912. Later he lived in Lodz working as a joiner, a cabinet maker and an organist. 212. Pozlanik Serkayezasawigo, Messenger of the Sacred Heart, a monthly magazine devoted to the devotion of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and published by the Jesuit Fathers at the Wydana II Apostolstwa Modlitwy House, 26 Kopernik Street, Krakow. 213. Probably at the shop of Chabalski, where devotional articles were sold. 214. A copy of Eugene Kazimirovsky's Image of Jesus, made ineptly by a Miss Balzukevich in Vilnius for the Redemptorist Fathers. It later appeared in Krakow. 215. Every sister is obliged to participate once a year in an 8-day retreat, so-called Big Retreat, as opposed to the 3-day retreat. In the Krakow house the professed sisters took advantage of the retreats given before the ceremonies of taking the veil and professing the vows. In 1937 the retreat was held from October 20 to 29, and was conducted by Father Nitka, S.J. This was Sister Faustina's last retreat together with the sisters. 216. There was a custom in the congregation of keeping written records of one's interior victories and falls. 217. The taking of the veil and the vows. 218. The cross was probably the illnesses of sisters and of the superior herself. There was a long-drawn flu epidemic in the house and, in addition, the following sisters were seriously ill: Sister Clemens Buchek, head gardener, down with gastric ulcers. Sister Virginia Narkovich, taken to the hospital because of serious heart trouble brought on by rheumatism. Sister Dominik Szymanska, seriously ill, died on November 15, 1937. 219. Sister Dominik, Josephine Szymanska. Born November 28, 1875, she entered the congregation in 1897. She worked in the Krakow house for 30 years, as a shoemaker, and became so expert in her job that she trained younger sisters. She died on November 15, 1937. 220. Sister Damiana Ziolek, who wanted to choose Bishop Esrospon to be her confessor. 221. This is a quotation from the Roman Martyrology, which was read in the refectory after the prayer before meals. 222. Pastorka is the Mass at midnight, December 24 to 25. According to the congregation's custom, the sisters went to bed after the Christmas Eve supper. Those who wanted to pray in the chapel until midnight asked for permission to do so. 223. The saint most probably had an inner knowledge as to the time of her death. She knew that this would be the final year of her life. 224. At the end of the year the sisters take part in a service of thanksgiving for the graces received, during which the Te Deum is sung. Usually all the sisters participate in the service. 225. The chaplain takes Holy Communion to the sisters who could not take part in the community mass on account of illness. Those less ill walk to the infirmary at the moment of communion, so as not to trouble the chaplain with visiting every cell. 226. Father Matsanger, S.J., temporarily substituting for the chaplain, Father Theodore Chaputa, who left for a few days to visit his brother, also a priest. 227. Sister Faustina's vision regarding Mother Irene Krizanovska came true insofar that Mother Krizanovska was a witness at the information process and was probably questioned about Sister Faustina and her writings. Mother Mary Joseph Broza, however, died on November 9, 1939, and we do not know whether anyone asked her about Sister Faustina. 228. Probably Sister Gertrude, who was sharing a small room called Separatka isolation ward with Sister Faustina at the time. Sister Gertrude Bajinska, born 1876, entered the congregation in 1895. She died in Krakow on August 11, 1966. 229. Probably Sister Ligoria Poznanska, the sacristan and an expert on handiwork, came to teach Sister Gertrude how to make borders for altar linens. Sister Ligoria Poznanska, born January 15, 1880, entered the congregation on December 4, 1919. She was sacristan almost all her life as a religious. In 1953 she was appointed assistant to the House Superior in Krakow. She died in Krakow on May 2, 1960. 230. It could be that at this particular time the saint was given to know the day of her death. 231. No date is given, but it can be supposed that the vision occurred between January 8 and 15, 1938. 232. Sister Faustina was very sensitive to the division into choirs. In this case, Sister Serafina certainly was not guided by the division, but seeing Sister Faustina already wet, she thought it would be easier for Sister Faustina to go to the gate than for another sister to get wet, too. In giving the order she obviously did not know Sister Faustina was unwell, or else she would have done otherwise. Sister Serafina was a good and pious sister. She was never known to make any differences among the sisters. 233. It was the custom in the congregation to pray for the dying person the prayer, "O most kind Jesus," and Psalm 129 out of the depths. 234. Sister Faustina's superiors during her lifetime as a religious, M. Margaret Gimbut, beginning of novitiate and third probation before perpetual vows, M. Raphael Baczynska, in Krakow and Warsaw, M. Rose Klobukowska, in Plock, M. Xavier Olszamowska, in Kieker, M. Borjatici, in Vilnius, M. Serafina Kukulska, in Wielandau. Sister Xavier, Jane Olszamowska, born 1883, entered the congregation in 1912. She was superior in Kieker and in Warsaw, and then was Secretary General. She died on March 11, 1970, in Krakow. 235. Confer Bishop Zbigniew Kraszewski, Udział Matki Bożej Wgl Odkupienia, the role of the Mother of God in the work of redemption in Gracia Plena, Poznan, 1965. 236. Probably Father M. Sopocko, because he was chiefly active in spreading the devotion of the Divine Mercy and in efforts to found the new community. But Sister Faustina may also have had in mind Father Andrasz or Mother Irene Krasnowska, because they, too, made efforts to spread the devotion of the Divine Mercy. 237. Father Theodore Chaputa was the confessor of the novitiate. Some of the professed sisters also made their confession to him. The saint's spiritual director was Father Andrasz. Sister Faustina is careful to make the distinction. 238. Sister Tarcisia, Kazimira Piotrowicz. Born in 1891, she entered the congregation in 1912. For a short time she was a nurse in the Krakow house. 239. Probably Sister Amelia, who was Sister Faustina's close friend. 240. Carnival, a time of revelry and merrymaking before the Lenten season. 241. A doctor called in to see the sick sisters. It is hard to say which one. A doctor's stock came frequently. 242. Probably Dr. Silberg, who knew Sister Faustina's condition. 243. To the Hospital for Contagious Diseases at Pradnik near Krakow, known as the Sanatorium. 244. There is a corridor leading from the house to the choir loft of the chapel. Sister Faustina was in the choir loft and so attended Mass, but she was not strong enough to go down and take part in the procession with the palms. 245. Father Zukowicz, S.J., who was celebrating Mass that day. He was assistant to the provincial for very many years. He was a close friend of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy. As a great benefactor of their apostolic work, he often visited the girls and brought them small gifts. 246. Sister Casimir, Irene Twarowska. Born 1911, she entered the congregation in 1933. She worked as a group instructor and then as the head of the Home for Girls. She died in Krakow on April 18, 1969. 247. The following sisters had been in the novitiate with Sister Faustina: senior novices, Sister Alice Dabrowska, Sister Cherubinka Wiska, Sister Ernest Schreiber, Sister Yvonne Goebel, Sister Joachim Gluck, Sister Kinga, Sister Crescentia Bogdanek, Sister Laurenta Kaczynska, Sister Longina Ushomska, Sister Lucen, Sister Natalie Fisher, Sister Placida Putira, Sister Renata Jodlowska, Sister Simon Nolwashko, Sister Valentina Leshinska. Junior Novices, Sister Anun Chataparai, Sister Bernarda Vilcek, Sister Celine Bronikovska, Sister Felicia Zakawiecka, Sister Justine Golofit, Sister Clementine Gluck, Sister Louise Gagina, Sister Martina, Sister Regina Jaworska, Sister Severina Marciniak, Sister Teresita, Sister Zenobia Saya. Sisters who were clothed together with Senior Faustina, Sister Bernadette Fedorovich, Sister Bonaventure Edelman Gloica, d. December 17, 1936, Sister Florentine Payuk, d. January 2, 1950, Sister Henry Skulimovska, d. October 20, 1974. Sisters who corresponded with Senior Faustina, Sister Justine Golofit, Sister Louise Gagina, Sister Regina Jaworska. Perhaps there were others, but at present they are unknown. 248. Sisters of the Congregation of Servants of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, who worked at the hospital at Pradnik. The congregation had been founded in Krakow in 1894 by Bishop Leach Czar. 249. Sister David Sadro. Sister Alana, Caroline Wilush, born July 20, 1910. Sister Mdarda, Caroline Podrazik, born June 16, 1910, died 1966. 250 similar incidents can be found in the lives of saints. For example, Saint Stanislaus Kostka and Saint Bonaventure. 251 Low Sunday. The Sunday mentioned by Sister Faustina was the first Sunday after Easter. That is, the day that was to be the Feast of the Divine Mercy. 252. Probably a reference to the flu epidemic which had begun in February and continued for several months. As many as 22 sisters were down on some days. 253. It is difficult to establish the date. Sister Faustina no longer dates anything but merely writes, "today." At any rate, this was after Pentecost. That is, after June 5. 254. It can be supposed that Sister Faustina had the vision of the heart of Jesus on the Friday after the octave of Corpus Christi. That is, on June 24, 1938. 255. Many souls have attained heroic sanctity, and so were saved, never having celebrated the Feast of Divine Mercy. Then, too, according to his revelations to Senior Faustina, Jesus offers to sinners another extraordinary means as a last hope of salvation, namely the Divine Mercy Chaplet, Confer Diary, 687. The statement made by our Lord here, 965, regarding the Feast of Mercy, therefore, must be seen within the context of the remainder of this passage. If they will not adore my mercy, they will perish for all eternity, as well as in the light of the statements declared on later occasions, I give souls the last hope of salvation, that is, recourse to my mercy, 998. And for them, lukewarm, indifferent souls, the last hope of salvation is to flee to my mercy, 1228. We see that the immediate and solely adequate response to God's mercy on the part of human beings is trust. The attitude of trust is the only means of coming to mercy, Confer 1578, and so, of finding refuge in it. Jesus calls it the last hope of salvation for the human soul, literally the plank or sheet anchor, the last refuge for safety, Confer Webster. The Feast of Mercy, therefore, must be seen in this context as an occasion serving as a powerful enticement for sinners to take hold of the promises which Jesus holds out to them in connection with its celebration, motivating, inducing them to trust that He will be true to them. Expressing that trust, by fulfilling the conditions Jesus gave for receiving on that day, Mercy Sunday, the total forgiveness of sins and punishment, as though a second baptism, will truly be for some souls the last opportunity to be reconciled with God, allowing him to present them to himself radiant, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless, Ephesians 5:27, and so, saved for all eternity.